Extradimensional Crisis is the new set coming to Pokemon TCG Pocket, and there's some really exciting cards coming to shift the metagame into a different direction. And today, I'm going to dive into 5 decks that I think are going to be strongly positioned to do well in the early metagame with using both old and new cards, so don't go anywhere. What's cracking, everybody? Pheramosa here, and this set changes everything, because they all do, don't they? Isn't that how these work? Seriously though, there are some really strong cards coming in with Extradimensional Crisis to support existing archetypes, as well as create some new ones, including the new Ultra Beast cards. I've got 5 unique decks in this video that I think are going to be instantly meta or close to it once this set drops. This video is recorded before the full set has been revealed though, so please keep in mind that the decks are only with the trailer reveals in mind and not the full set, because we don't know the full set yet. Before we get into the decks, just a quick housekeeping note. I'm a small channel and I want to say thank you to you. Yes, you, trainer. We recently hit 100 subscribers, and I am excited to continue bringing my own flavor of TCG Pocket content, mostly featuring my favorite decks for fun and for climbing. Please consider dropping a like and hitting subscribe if you enjoy the content, and let me know down in the comments what deck you're most excited to play when Extradimensional Crisis drops later this week. Now, without further ado, let's talk about these Ultra Beats. Wait. Beasts? I thought they were into music, man. Alright, so here's the first deck we cooked up here in the lab. This is going to be a Guzzlord EX deck featuring Celesteela and Oranguru as its other backup support Pokemon cards. We're going to be using this deck as a way to control every aspect of the opponent's energy. By running Guzzlord, Team Rocket, Grunt, and Oranguru, we're going to be able to pull off some really annoying combos with the cards in this deck. The first card that we're going to review here is going to be Guzzlord EX. I've got it right underneath me on the webcam here. I'm trying to blow it up so y'all can see the cards and what they do. Guzzlord EX allows you to flip a coin until you get tails with Grind Core for 30 damage and 2 energy. Each heads, discard a random energy from the opponent's active Pokemon, just like Team Rocket Grunt. So not only now do you get the ability to use Team Rocket Grunt as your supporter for the turn, but you get a second roll on it if in case you fail, which with all these coin flip cards, let's be honest, most of us just get tails right away anyway. So at least we have a second chance to get tails and have a little bit of hope. Using Guzzlord is a really strong way to limit the opponent's ability to attach energy, because we only get 1 manual attach per turn, and that'll force them to use other acceleration cards, which if they don't have any, Guzzlord is going to be a massive problem for them. The other Pokemon that we're going to be looking at in this deck is going to be Celesteela, and I want you to keep in mind that Celesteela is not an EX card. Celesteela's ability, Ultra Thrusters, allows you to, once during your turn, switch an active Ultra Beast with a benched Ultra Beast. You can switch Celesteela with itself, you can switch Guzzlord with a Celesteela, you can switch Guzzlord with itself in this deck, but that allows you to manipulate your own board by completely ignoring the ridiculously high retreat costs on these Ultra Beast cards. Celesteela and Guzzlord both having a retreat cost of 4 is a very difficult thing to do manually, so having Ultra Thrusters in your deck is going to be really strong to be able to move your cards around. Oranguru fits this deck's theme perfectly, using Primate's Trap, 40 damage for 2 energy, but the effect is what matters here. During your opponent's next turn, any attacks or retreats from the opponent's active Pokemon will cost 1 extra energy, which means that not only are we going to be removing energy from the opponent, but we're also going to be able to force them to need an extra energy to be able to use their retreats and attacks. These 6 Pokemon in this deck, I think, are going to just make life very difficult for a lot of trainers, and I think that control decks are going to start to become much more of a thing. We're going to be running 2 Giant Capes in this deck as well, because with 20 additional HP, Celesteela is going to be able to avoid being KO'd by Guzzlord, Buzzwole, as well as the old guard Giratina. We can also pump Oranguru up to 120 HP so that other Celesteelas can't take it out in one shot, and caping Guzzlord up to 190 HP just gives it a lot of HP on top of its already massive 170 HP stat. We also like 1 copy of Rocky Helmet just to annoy our opponents and do some chip damage while Guzzlord or even Celesteela or anything is sitting in the active while we set up and back. Because this is a control deck, we're also going to be running ways to manipulate the board, which is going to be mostly centered around Ilima and Team Rocket Grunt. Ilima is going to be really helpful because we're using 2 different colorless Pokemon that we can simply just Ilima back to the hand if we need to in order to put, for example, Guzzlord or Celesteela. We cannot swap Oranguru using Celesteela's ability, but we can use Ilima in order to get it out of the active to be able to put any of our Ultra Beasts, which is now where the combos can start flowing. We're going to run 1 copy of Guzma in this deck to be able to pilfer and destroy any tools the opponent may be utilizing on their board. Reads as follows. You can use this card only if your opponent has gotten at least 1 point. So you've given them a Celesteela, a Oranguru, or given them a Guzzlord already. Choose one of your Ultra Beasts, attach 2 random energy from your discard pile to that Pokemon, and that is going to allow us to take any energy energy that was either taken away due to a discard from retreating or from being knocked out, and you can attach those 2 energy to any of your on-board Ultra Beast cards. That's going to be Guzzlord and Celesteela. We're only running dark energy in this deck, so all that energy is going to make sure it gets used somewhere. We're also running 2 research and 2 Pokeball because those 4 cards are going to be in almost every deck for the rest of time until they decide to put something even more broken in this game. We're also running a copy of Pokemon Center Lady for some heals. I would say the Pokemon Center Lady, Guzma, and one of the Illumas could be flex spots if you wanted to try some different cards in this deck. I have those there because they're just cards that I like to use. They're consistent. They're comfort cards for me. They usually work in decks and games that I play them in, so I like them in this deck a lot. Our next deck is going to be very similar to the one we just looked at, but we're going to be looking over at the Buzzwole EX, which is a Grass Ultra Beast basic EX card that was introduced in the trailer. With 2 energy, it can deal 30 damage with Punch and has 120 heavy hitting damage for 3 energy with Big Beat. The only downside to using Big Beat, though, unfortunately, is that next turn your Buzzwole cannot use Big Beat. However, this deck is engineered specifically to bypass that downside and do everything we can to make sure the Buzzwole can consistently go for that Big Beat every turn as long as we have the right cards in play. Celesteela's Ultra Thruster's ability is going to be crucial in this combo to be able to either switch your Buzzwole in the bench with one in the active and allow you to continuously use Big Beat every turn, or you can even switch Celesteela with your active Buzzwole and be able to pop back the Celesteela into your hand with Illima. Kartana's also in here as our 2 of basic that is just there to do 40 damage for a single energy. For 60 HP, it's just as fine as any other basic, but for 40 damage for 1 energy, this thing is going to come out swinging, and if we can put a Leaf Cape on it, that gives it a respectable 90 HP pool for it to basically be a better Farfetch'd. We're also going to be running a Rocky Helmet just to be able to do a little bit of chip damage, 2 copies of Erica for healing, 2 copies of Professor's Research and Pokeball for that consistency, 1 copy of Illima, which it could be 2. I'm only running 1 in this version because of the fact that we only have the 2 Celesteelas, and just 1 copy of Illima seems reasonable to me. We have our copy of Guzma to drop off those Pokemon tools, and 2 copies of Lusamine in this deck because Kartana is most likely either going to be sitting in the active and doing chip damage, or it's going to be retreating and discarding an energy. So Lusamine is going to be a lot easier to use in this deck because of the fact that we're going to have something with a single retreat cost, and we can simply just put Lusamine down, get that, even that 1 energy can make a difference in the mid game. We're also running just 1 copy of Sabrina in the deck for a little bit of disruption, but then again, the flex spots here, I would say once again, we're sitting here with a copy of Sabrina, Guzma, and 1 of the Lusamines I think are probably going to be the most flexible things. Everything else I think is pretty standard for a deck like this, but you could try and use your own flavor of cards aside from those 3 if you like. The next deck we're going to be looking at here is going to be the best version of Decidueye EX that does not require you to have Meowscarada in the deck. It does not require you to evolve into a Lurantis, and you don't have to run Spiritomb and get out healed by Shaman. Pheramosa is going to be able to do 20 damage to not only the active with 1 energy, but also be able to do 20 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon, perfectly setting you up for Decidueye to set up in the back, only needing 2 energy to use Pierce the Pain or Razor Leaf, whichever attack suits your needs the most. Decidueye is going to be able to take full advantage of Pheramosa's ability to hit the bench and do 100 damage to any Pokemon that has damage on it. And because Pheramosa is doing 20, your opponent has to use a supporter or a item card. It cannot out heal with just a single Shaman, which a lot of decks are currently running just the 1 copy. So they'll need 2 copies of Shaman, or they'll need to be able to overcome it with some other items. We're running the 2 Leaf Capes because all of our Pokemon in this deck are grass, and we're running the rare candies as well as the Dartrix for max consistency on getting Decidueye online as soon as possible. We are also running 2 Professor's Research, 2 Pokeballs for the obvious reasons, 2 copies of Erica, a copy of Guzma, and 2 copies of Cyrus. I wouldn't be upset if somebody told me they wanted to drop Dartrix or Guzma for a copy of Pokemon Communications for this deck for consistency, trying to make sure that you can get your combo online as soon as possible. But at the same time, I feel like it depends on what you're seeing in the meta at the time and what you need. So this is definitely like a flex spot situation. Dartrix and Guzma, I think they can go if they need to, but they are there in order to be able to overcome certain things like Oricorios. But Dartrix is there to be able to overcome Oricorio potentially, not easily, but it can. And Guzma's there to be able to help get rid of any capes, tools, or anything that may be preventing you from getting any points that turn. Nihilego is another Ultra Beast that is coming out in Extradimensional Crisis, and it is poison support with the ability More Poison. Your opponent's going to take an extra 10 damage from being poisoned, and its ability New Wave with 2 energy, 1 dark, 1 colorless means that your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned and does 30 damage to boot. We're going to be pairing this up with Coughing and Wheezing. However, this could work just fine with your choice of Toxicroak or any other poison-afflicting cards, and the reason why this is going to be such a strong combo with Nihilego is because it functions just like Lucario with its fighting coach ability, allowing your fighting type attacks to do more damage. This is also a stackable ability. If you have 2 Nihilegos on the board, you're going to be doing 20 more damage. That's 30 damage per tick of poison with 2 Nihilegos on board. And this thing is going to be just a nasty little jellyfish to be putting on the bench to be able to ramp up that poison damage. Now, I have a soft spot for Weezing. It was one of the first decks that I ever completed and was able to run back when Genetic Apex was the main set. Its ability, Gas Lake, allows you to simply just use it, poison the opponent's Pokemon in the active, and it combos very well with Koga, which allows you to put a Muck or Weezing from your active spot into your hand. Now, there's definitely things that you could do with this card. It's similar to Ilima in other decks that we've showcased so far, but you essentially would like to be using Weezing to poison. Have 2 Nihilegos in the back on the bench to inflict even more damage from the poison, and be able to Koga back your damaged Weezing and be able to build it all over again. Since it only requires 1 energy to use an attack, it's a very quick thing to set back up. Also going to be running 2 copies of Darkrai EX in this deck because the energy cost of these Pokemon that we are using is very low. So we are going to be able to also add to the poison damage that we are inflicting every turn with Nightmare Aura on Darkrai. You're all very familiar with it, but just in case you're not, Darkrai does 20 damage to the opponent's active anytime a dark energy from the energy zone gets attached to it. Dark Prism does a solid 80 damage for 3 energy, and this thing is going to be a menace as you look to build it up in the back, deal additional damage with the Weezing, attacking or by poison, and once Weezing is finally taking some damage and you want to get it out of there, you can Koga it out, put your built Darkrai EX in front, or start chipping away with a Nihilego, whatever makes the most sense at the time. We are going to be running 2 copies of Giant Cape and a Rocky Helmet for some extra HP and damage. We want to be able to cape over some of those common breakpoints that you're going to see, especially Darkrai being at 140 HP. It needs that cape to be able to survive a hit from Buzzwole EX. And we're also going to be running the 2 copies of Pokeball and Research, as we always do. Cyrus, just in case something gets poisoned, wants to retreat out of the active. A copy of Pokemon Communications, as we're running 8 Pokemon cards in this deck. It makes sense to be able to use one just to be able to get the piece that you need. Maybe you have an extra one that you don't. 2 copies of Koga to be able to whisk away our Weezing to the promised land, and a copy of Sabrina as well to be able to get anything that hasn't been damaged or we can't Cyrus into the active so that we can start applying poison and pressure to the opponents. Now here's going to be my take on an electric aggro deck that could be very fast. Thunderclap Flash on Zeraora, one of my favorite legendaries, by the way. I'm so glad to see this thing coming into the game. Thunderclap Flash at the end of your first turn, so you have to have Zeraora on the board on your first turn. Allows you to take an electric energy from your energy zone and attach it at the end of the turn. The way that I'm reading this card at the end of your first turn, you can automatically just get an energy on Zeraora, and you can attach an electric energy to this Pokemon and be able to attack with it as early as your second turn. This makes Zeraora a very fast-paced aggro type kind of Pokemon that allows us to do a lot of damage very quickly. We're going to be pairing it with Tapu, Koko EX, which has Plasma Hurricane, another self-attaching ability. It's going to allow you to place an electric energy from your energy zone and attach it to this Pokemon. That means that if you're going second, you can open with Tapu Koko. If you're going first, you can open with Zeraora, and you can make sure that you are attacking immediately as the game is starting. And Mach Bolt for 90 damage on 3 energy is pretty solid for Tapu Koko, and 130 HP pool is not the greatest. We do need to use a cape in order to keep it over something like Giratina, but it's a very solid card that allows it to ramp itself up. We're also going to be splashing in 2 copies of Oricorio because it makes sense, but there's other electric cards in the game that you could probably put in if you prefer not to run Oricorio. We're going to be rocking 2 copies of Rocky Helmet and a copy of Giant Cape. You could flip-flop which one you want to run 2 and 1 of, but I think that having them both is a solid take in this deck. We're running 2 copies of X Speed so that we can make sure that whatever we open with is what we want, and if we open with the wrong thing, perhaps we want to have Tapu Koko in the lead. Since we are going to be going second, we want to be able to use X Speed to get the Oricorio or the Zeraora out of the active and put the Tapu Koko there to be able to start hitting the opponent as soon as possible. 2 Research, 2 Pokeball still applies. We're going to be running a copy of Mars for Disruption and another copy of Guzma because I love Guzma. This deck also features 2 copies of Sabrina so that we can try to get around things like Oricorio or be able to bring other things into the active so that we can start hitting them and the opponent has to suffer for it because Sabrina's a goat. We're also running 1 copy of Dawn in this deck because being able to move the energy around that is generated automatically on the first turn by Zeraora could get us to a position where we could attack immediately with Oricorio or immediately with Tapu Koko, or even be able to just use one of the other Zeraoras to immediately get the energy onto the other Zeraora. I think there's a lot of strong combos that can be done with this card, but again, this is a flex spot. Now, I got an extra deck for you. Thanks for sticking around this long. This is 100% an old deck that is not utilizing any of the new cards, but Araquanid is going to be feasting on this meta because all of the new EX cards are basics, which means that it's going to be able to utilize its ability Dangerous Claws, doing an extra 60 damage for a total of 120 on 3 energy. We're going to be utilizing the 2 copies of Manaphy. This deck was also something that I featured recently on the channel. I'll try to leave a link somewhere so you can go check it out if you'd like to try it, or make sure you have the cards ready for it because I think this deck is going to be really great. Manaphy is going to be able to accelerate energies onto both the Palkia that we're running in this deck as well as the Araquanids. We're going to be running 2 copies of Rocky Helmet, which are going to help bring things down to an HP range where Araquanid can do the rest. Giant Cape is going to be helpful for getting us some breakpoints. 2 copies of Research a Pokeball for consistency. 2 copies of Lana, which is going to be the card that is comboed with Araquanid. It allows you to freely switch your opponent's active with anything on their bench of your choosing, as long as you have an Araquanid in place somewhere. Could be active, could be on the bench, doesn't matter where, but Lana is an extremely powerful disruption card that you can use to put Pokemon wherever you like them on the opponent's board. We're also running our 2 copies of Misty because Misty coin flips when you get heads win games. We're also going to be running a copy of Red for extra damage into the EX Pokemon, as well as a copy of Irida for healing. That's going to do it for the decks for this video. Let me know in the comments which of these decks is your favorite, or if you have another one you're excited to try. I'm actually going to see if I can't do a full set review when the full thing gets released, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thank you as always. Bye-bye.